Hey guys, Snowflakey Zemos here today with a new deck profile. This is my Divine Dragon Felgrand deck profile. This is a deck build that uses the Felgrand cards that came out in the structure deck quite a few years back, with some, just powerful anti-meta support in there that can just set up and stun an opponent out of the game using really cool big dragons. Always been a fan of these cards, so very glad that I found a build that I'm solidly happy with. So with that, let's get into the card by card. Starting off with our monsters, I am playing 3 copies of Divine Dragon Lord Felgrand. This is a 2800 tech 8-star monster. If this card is special summoned from the graveyard, you can target a monster on your opponent's field or in their graveyard and banish it. And then if you do, this card gains attack and defense equal to the level/rank of that monster times 100. This is a 2800 attack monster, so very easy to get this thing over 3000. And then, of course, if this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can target a level 7 or 8 dragon type monster in your graveyard, except Divine Dragon Lord Felgrand, and special summon it, which is pretty sweet. Usually the card I'm pulling off of that summon effect is this, my 3 copies of Archbrave Dragon. Archbrave Dragon is the other Felgrand card that came in the structure deck all those years ago. If this card is special summoned from the graveyard, you can banish as many face-up spell or trap cards your opponent controls as possible, which is a pretty nice effect. And if you do it, this card gains 200 attack and defense for each one that it did. Pretty sweet. And the real good effect of this card, though, if during the standby phase, if this card is in your graveyard because it was sent there the previous turn, you can special summon a level 7 or 8 dragon from your grave, except Archbrave Dragon. So you can use that to pull out Divine Dragon Lord Felgrand, and when Felgrand destroys a monster, you can get out Archbrave, so if your field gets wiped, they'll both go to the grave, and Archbrave's effect will trigger again. So it's a good way to kind of keep looping those monsters. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of a Morphage Goliath, which is one of the win conditions of this deck. It's a level 8 dragon monster that says neither player can special summon monsters from the extra deck except Morphage monsters. So much of Yu-Gi-Oh! Special summoning monsters from the extra deck that turning that off can just outright win you a lot of matchups, especially if your opponent can't deal with this card, which is kind of harder to do in this deck because we have ways to protect it or whatnot, and definitely also hurt when you don't have extra deck monsters to help remove it. So pretty good card. Do note that as a pendulum monster, when this card on the field is destroyed, it doesn't go to the graveyard, it goes to the pendulum zone, so mostly you're only getting it out the one time when you send it to the graveyard directly from the deck or your hand or something like that. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon. Blue Eyes White Dragon is the biggest level 8 normal dragon monster, and we're playing Dragon Shrine in this deck, so we figure we might as well throw in a copy or 2 of Blue Eyes. It's got 3000 attack, which is pretty big, and when you dump a normal monster off Dragon Shrine, you get to dump an additional card, so it just gets 2 cards out of the deck, and it is just a good stat line to pull off of Felgrand if you need that extra attack to go for game, or just want additional presence, so we might as well play it. But playing 2 of those also allows us to play a copy of Blue Eyes Jet Dragon, which is a pretty sweet card for this deck, playing those Blue Eyes. Other cards you control cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effect, and you can only use each of the following effects of Blue Eyes Jet Dragon once per turn, and they must be activated while a Blue Eyes White Dragon is on your field or in the graveyard, which is pretty easy to do with Dragon Shrine in this deck. And then, of course, if a card on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon this card from your hand or graveyard. So that's pretty nice, especially because we have a lot of cards that synergize with dragons being summoned from the graveyard. And then, of course, if this card battles, you can target a card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. So pretty cool. Pretty powerful effects, and this guy recurs quite frequently. So it's a pretty good card, especially one of the better ones to sit in your hand because you can summon it from your hand, and we'll make use of that. Next, I'm playing 3 copies of Card Trooper. Card Trooper is a classic Yu-Gi-Oh! Powerhouse, Troop Dupe Scoop, but in this deck we're mostly using it just to mill some dragons. Once per turn you can choose a number 1 to 3, then send that many of the cards from the top of our deck to the graveyard, and if we do, this card gains 500 attack for each one we did until the end of this turn. And then, of course, if this card you control is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can draw 1 card. So drawing a card is nice, and milling cards is nice because any of these big dragons that we send to the graveyard it's going to feel real good to do so. And we don't have much else to normal summon, so, you know, Card Trooper is very good. You can get some good hits off this card, and then when this card gets destroyed, draw a card, keeps your deck moving, and we like that. And last for the monsters, I'm playing 3 copies of Starliege Seifert. This is our other normal summon option, and this allows us to send any number of dragon monsters from our hand to the or face up on the field to the graveyard to add a dragon type monster from our deck to our hand, whose levels equal the total original levels of the cards sent. So we can send any level 8 dragon in for another level 8, or we can send our level 7 Archbrave to get another Archbrave, and that will get us an Archbrave in the grave. Use it to grab Goliath, whichever card we're looking for. Oftentimes you want to grab Blue Eyes Jet Dragon, because that one can be summoned from the hand, whereas the other ones you want to summon from the graveyard. So it's just another good option to have in the deck. To use our normal summon on, and it's also got 1800 attack, which is pretty solid. And that is it for our monsters. First up for our spell cards, I am playing 3 copies of Dragon Shrine. Dragon Shrine is a pretty good spell. It allows us to send a dragon type monster from our deck to the grave, and if it was a normal monster, we can send one more. So we send our Blue Eyes that are in our deck to the grave, and then we are able to send one more, usually prioritizing either a Morphage Goliath or Archbrave Dragon, whichever of those 2 we need. And while we can only activate 1 Dragon Shrine per turn, we want to dump plenty of dragons, so we'll be glad to resolve multiple of these over the course of a duel. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Dragon Ravine. I only have, I'm waiting for 2 more to come in the mail still, so I got those proxies there. But Dragon Ravine is a pretty good field spell. Once per turn, you can discard a card to activate 1 of these effects, either add a level 4 Dragunity monster from our deck, not doing that, no Dragunities in here, or send a dragon type monster from your deck to the graveyard. That can get us Archbrave, it can get us Goliath, it can get us whatever we're looking for, send it right to the grave, and usually the card we're discarding is another dragon we want in the grave anyway. So, you know, not even much of a cost to be paid there. And I have 1 copy of Terraforming. Of course, to see it, I want to see Dragon Ravine, and multiple Dragon Ravine is not that bad because its effect is not a hard once per turn. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Return of the Dragon Lords. This is a spell card that allows us to target a level 7 or 8 dragon type monster in the graveyard and special summon it. Then if a dragon type monster on our field would be destroyed by battle or card effect, we can banish this card instead. So this is a good way to get out a Morphage Goliath turn 1 and then have a way to protect it if your opponent tries to Raigeki it or something like that. And, you know, just a great card all around. Was definitely one of the big selling points of this deck. Next, I'm also playing 3 copies of Ruin of the Dragon Lord. Now, this card maybe only needs to be at 2 or 1, and you can play some kind of other floodgate, like Summon Limit or something like that. But I like this one. It's pretty thematic, and it's kind of like an archetypal skill terrain. If a monster is special summoned from the graveyard, except from the graveyard, while you control a level 7 or 8 dragon type monster, that face up special summon monster has its effects negated until the end of the turn, which is pretty sweet. That makes it a lot harder to combo if you're sitting on a monster special summon from the grave. And then once per turn, you can send 1 other face up card you control to the graveyard, special summon a Dragon Lord token. And then that's a pretty nice effect for getting Archbrave Dragons off the field, allowing us to summon them into something else. And then maybe we have Felgrand to attack and generate us another Archbrave Dragon and can keep doing that. All pretty sweet stuff. And then, of course, when this card is in the graveyard, you can send a level 7 or 8 Dragon type monster from your hand or face up from the field to the graveyard to add this card to your hand. So even when this card gets removed, there's a way to get it back. So it's pretty cool. Negating the effects of special summon monsters on the turn they're special summon is incredibly powerful. Can stop an opponent right in their tracks. But you're welcome to try other things out too, like Summon Limit and cards like that. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. We're playing a Morphage Goliath, so we're trying not to make too many extra deck plays, so we might as well turn those into cards. Banishing 3 to 6 extra deck cards face down allows us to draw a card for every 3, so we banish 6, draw 2. Pretty sweet. We can't use any other draw effects, which, you know, there are a couple, but, you know, it's definitely worth the +1. Playing 1 copy of Monster Reborn. It brings a monster back from either player's graveyard, and the whole point of this deck is to summon our dragons from the grave. We are playing Card Destruction, this is a fun deck to play Card Destruction in. Now we can't use this if we played Pot of Extravagance because it is a draw effect. But both players discard their hands and then draw the same amount of cards they discarded. So once we play our cards and we're sitting on some big dragons in our hand, you can Card Destruction them to the grave, get an Archbrave, get a Felgrand, everything you want access to the grave, get a couple more cards to play to follow up and play some more. Just a good option to have. Hopefully you don't have to play against Dark Worlds. Next, we're playing Foolish Burial. It sends a monster from the deck to the graveyard, and a whole point of this deck is to send cards to the graveyard, so we want that. And then I'm playing a copy of Reasoning. This deck's got a lot of different levels, so that makes Reasoning pretty good. Your opponent just declares a monster level, and you excavate cards from the top of your deck until you get a monster that can be summoned. And if it's the level your opponent calls, you send it to the graveyard, which honestly isn't even bad. Otherwise, you summon it, which gets you a body on field. So it's pretty cool. I mean, we got level 3s, we got level 4s, we got level 8s, we got level 7s. So it's hard for your opponent to, just 100% stop your Reasoning from going off. And even if they hit your level 7 or 8 monster, that's okay. You probably wanted it in the graveyard anyway. And that is it for the spell card. Next, just to talk about trap cards real quick, I'm just playing 3 copies of Call of the Haunted. Of course, you can play back to the front, but some of the monsters like a Morphage Goliath got low defense, so I like Call of the Haunted because it summons them in attack. Call of the Haunted is just a trap card that targets a monster in your graveyard and special summons it. If this card is destroyed, then the monster you control is destroyed as well. So this is pretty cool. This can get us out Felgrand in the middle of a turn for a disruptive play. It can get us out a Morphage Goliath on our opponent's standby phase if we don't have Archbrave to do so. So just a good option to have. Any other kind of revival card could be going in the slot, but I like Call of the Haunted pretty well here. And that is it for the main deck. As far as extra deck cards go, not too much to talk about. We're mostly turning off the extra deck with a Morphage Goliath and then banishing it for Extravagance. But a couple good options that you can go into. We're having lots of level 8s, so you can play Hope Harbinger, which is pretty nice. It's a level 8 dragon monster, which has a lot of synergy and has the ability to negate spell cards once per turn, which is pretty sweet. You can also play the big level 8 guy, Lancelot, I believe, that negates effects, which is pretty cool. You can play other rank 8Zs. You can play Zeus to, put over top your XZ when it attacks. And of course, you can play a couple copies of Blue Eyes Twin Burst because it is possible to get 2 Blue Eyes on the field and tag them out for Twin Burst, which can attack monsters twice and banish any monsters that it does not destroy by its battle, which is pretty sweet. So just some options, not too big. Just make sure, of course, to run 15 cards for that max Extravagance payoff. So that is it for my Felgrand deck. Just a very fun deck to play casually, and I mean it has some powerful, stunning capabilities that can just win a lot of games. Morphage Goliath is incredibly powerful. Ruins of the Dragon Lord, of course, turning off special summon monster effects can be huge, and your dragons are pretty big, and they got some pretty cool cards. Much love for these, so I'm very glad to have this to my pool of decks. So let me know what you think. Love to know what you're doing with Felgrand, and if you enjoy these cards, or maybe what kind of new support for this deck you would like to see. That Grand Tusk Dragon that's coming out is kind of interesting. Actually, it is out as of this video, so that'll be something to look into. But anyway, that's it for me. It's Snowflarky Zemos. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you all next time.